Hey, somebody needs to name their story. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to The Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today and with every show we do is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. This week, The Professional Noticer is sponsored by wisdomharbor.com, the streaming service whose goal it is to create the next greatest generation. For less than $3 a month, you'll have access to original content found only on wisdomharbor.com that builds effective and influential relationships between adults and young people. Dave Ramsey says it's also good for your business and teams. Utilizing video, audio, and the written word, content is delivered in small bites by Grammy winners, CEOs, comedians, master chefs, best-selling authors, and Hall of Fame speakers. There are even guitar lessons from an award-winning songwriter. So join wisdomharbor.com right now and become a part of the quest to create another greatest generation, starting with your family in your hometown. That's wisdomharbor.com. Observations and answers. That's what we do here on The Professional Noticer. And as you know, we love it when somebody comes to the table with both. And we have that today in the studio. We have a guy whose adult life has taken on three distinct iterations: the computer business, his own business that was like opposite of the computer business, and now as a novelist, and a very successful, a great novelist. Please welcome Herb Hughes. Herb, glad to have you here.
Thank you, Andy. I'm honored to be here.
Man, I appreciate so much your buddy who connected us. And you're from Alabama.
Right. Born and raised.
Wow. And so you still live in Huntsville. You have a place down here at the coast. And people say to me all the time, I had not heard of you. And I'm like, yeah, well, no big deal. But I had not heard of you. And
well, that's no big deal.
Yeah, thank you. Well, when it was mentioned, hey, perhaps you could have Herb on your podcast. We get a lot of inquiries about that, and you just can't do everybody, and we're booked out way in advance. But I said what I usually say. I said, well, let me check into it, and so I bought your book, Conecuh, which is a Civil War novel, and I got to say, I have not read a better Civil War novel ever. It's historical fiction. It's brilliant.
Thank you.
I'm just telling you, for somebody who reads as much as I do and writes, to find a new take on a story that, everybody's heard of the Civil War, and most of us have read about the Civil War in one form or another. And to find a story that hadn't been done to death, to find a story that, it was awesome. Did you have that in your mind for a long time, or did it come to you as you were dealing it out?
No, I've got a cousin, Sherry Garner, who is one of my readers. And she called me one day and said, I've got a story for you. It's about my husband's great uncle, Caleb Garner, who fought in the Civil War. She sent me her research materials. She's a genealogist, enthusiast at least. And she sent me her material. I went through it. I read it, and it was an amazing story. I was hooked. What he went through was just unbelievable. And but it wasn't good enough just for a novel. So I added a fiance, and I added an enslaved person who was a part Cherokee Indian.
Right.
And had them roaming all over the North in search of Caleb to try to free him and get him back home. It was a fun book to write in a lot of ways. It was a lot of work. I've got, with all the research I had to do, and the book is historically accurate. I spent over 2,500 hours in that book.
When did you write that?
2019, 18 and 19.
Okay.
Through there.
All right. Well, I got to say, reading the book too, Caleb Garner, who's nicknamed Conecuh, because that's the county he was from.
Right.
And of course, to us in Alabama, that's a famous sausage too.
Yeah.
And, but, so Caleb Garner, nicknamed Conecuh, and his fiance and the domestic, I got to say, those are great characters, but you have one of the best bad guys. I mean, that guy, every time he showed back up, I was like, not again. I mean, I was like just waiting for this guy to get killed, So it was a thrilling book for me to read.
Yeah. There are people like him. Thank goodness they're few and far between.
Right.
But yeah, he was a toughie, a meanie.
Oh my gosh. You wrote, I thought you wrote him perfectly, because what a perfect bad guy. He's good looking. He's smart, but evil to his bones. And he won a lot of those battles. I'll leave it to the readers to find out if he won the war or not, but he won a lot of those personal battles. He was going against people, but good grief. You did good with him.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you, Andy, I've read some of your books, and they are just absolutely wonderful. I love them. Great stories, and just a model for life in these things.
Well,
really good.
Did you? Have you read? And I hate to ask you this and put you on the spot, but was one of them you read Traveler's Gift?
Yes.
Did you notice the connection between your book and my book?
I did. Chamberlain charged down that hill.
I mean,
you got the Union end of it, and I had the Confederate end of it. But it was
because Caleb Garner was part of the 4th Alabama. Mm-hmm. That was at Gettysburg, and that was one of the 2 regiments that was charging up Little Round Top. And so I covered it from the Union's perspective, from Chamberlain's perspective, and you covered it from the 4th Alabama. I was really thrilled when I read that.
That was literally one of the main turning points in the war.
Right.
And all these Union soldiers are pouring out like ants out of a hill with no ammunition.
Right.
Bayonets fixed and acting like they're going to take over the world,
I thought that was good. How did you get started writing? How did you know you wanted to be a writer? Because you were in the computer industry for years, and then at the age most people are starting to think about retiring, you stopped computering and created your own paving business, your hardscape business, which was huge.
Well, it goes back a lot further than that. I used to, in middle school and high school, in English class, when they'd get through a little boring grammar, and we got to read the poems and the stories and all, that was so much better. Right. And I wrote those. I liked it. And I said, well, shoot, I can write that. I can write poems. So I'd get my notebook and my pencil, and I'd go out and sit under a tree in a pasture or some idyllic setting, like on the bank of a creek, and I'd write all these poems up. And I thought, boy, I'm pretty good. I may be the next Robert Frost here. I'd read them and say, this is really good stuff. Well, I had an uncle. I was about 15 or 16, and I had an uncle who is the managing editor of the National Future Farmer magazine at Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And he managed it for several decades. And he had come down for a visit. So my mother, his sister, gave him some of my poems to read. And he sat there and read them and had this old deep voice and got up and said, well, some of the worst writing in the world was some of the works done by our earliest writers. And that kind of took the wind out of my sails a little bit. But I didn't stop. I was determined, and I pushed on. And I got a little vindication a few years later when I had some poems published in the College of anthologies and in some commercial anthologies.
Right.
But I've written all my life. I've always been good at making money. I started working when I was 12 years old.
Right.
And I would get jobs, and I would advance in those jobs, and I would make more money than all my buddies. But my true talent was spending money. So even though I had more, I got in debt early and often.
Right.
So I spent my life chasing a paycheck, basically. And that left, I worked in the computer business 50, 60, 70 hours a week. Didn't leave a whole lot of time for writing. I have written on the side all these decades, but no novels. It's just so much work.
Right.
I wrote songs with a gentleman named Tim Lewis, and he lived in Nashville. He had written with a number of writers up there, like Roger Murrah and people like that, and had a number of hits. And so he had moved, and I was in Montgomery at the time. He was in Montgomery. We wrote about 40 or 50 songs over the years, and we had a few recorded. Nothing ever got higher than 84 on the country charts. So I didn't get rich doing that, but I had a lot of fun. And It was great going to the studio and watch somebody record a song.
Sure.
Written.
Yeah.
And which we had a local band in Huntsville. Well, I say local, they're from the Southeast, a bunch of studio musicians. The name's 5 Points Curve. They recorded one of those songs from 40 years ago.
Really?
This past winter.
Oh, wow.
I had a blast with that. It was a lot of fun. It's a song called Southern Breeze. And we just really enjoyed it. But at any rate, I kept writing over the years. I started doing nonfiction writing. And I had a background in my early years in the construction business. So I sold a nonfiction book to a company out of New Jersey and wrote a couple of books for them. And I wrote a number of magazine articles. And I had a magazine, Homeowners How To, I think it was, that was buying virtually every article I wrote. So at the time, I was working at a civil engineer firm in Montgomery. And I said, well, I'm getting there. So I'm going to retire and write, because that's what I want to be, as a writer.
Right.
And so they had a big going away dinner for me. I retired, big retirement.
So you wanted to be a writer when you grew up, but
Yeah.
you had to retire to do it.
Yeah, I was 30 years old at the
Yeah.
time. And, or maybe 29, whatever it was. They had a big dinner for me. I retired formally. Within 2 weeks, my book publisher said, well, we've got to cut back. The economy's bad. We can't buy any more books for now. My magazine said, well, we've had to cut back. The economy's bad. We're going to use all the articles we got in our files for now. We're not going to buy any new articles. My wife lost her job. The stove broke. The car broke.
Oh, my God.
This all happened within 2 weeks.
Is there somebody trying to tell me something?
Yeah. We sat there staring at each other. And, back in those days, this was late 70s, bill collectors came around in the daytime. They went home at night. So we had no income, house payment, car payment, etc. And so every morning we'd scare up $2 or $3, go through the sofa, borrow it from a neighbor, whatever, and buy $2 worth of gas and $1 worth of minnows, and go to a dam just north of Montgomery and sit there and fish all day. And then we'd come home at night when the bill collectors had gone home. We'd take a peanut butter sandwich for lunch, and we'd come home and cook fish for supper.
Cook fish.
And that's when I discovered that fishing was not my career path. My wife would catch 7, 8, 10 fish, 12 fish. I think she caught 15 or 20 a couple times. I would catch one, or more likely none. So I took up golf. I discovered I could actually hit a good shot every once in a while, But,
Golf costs money, though. Golf costs more than $1 worth of minnows.
It does, and it was tough back at that time. I didn't play a whole lot. My first set of clubs, $10 set, I bought at a yard sale.
Right. So what was your first novel?
Tennessee Yankee.
Tennessee Yankee.
Yeah, and
because I'm determined to go through your whole catalog. I'm going to read everything you wrote.
Yeah, I've got no problem with that.
You know, one thing I want to say to people who are watching this, you are an independent writer. You know, you're not connected with a major publisher.
Right.
You're an independent writer and a major living with this. And this is really encouraging to a lot of people who watch this show, is that you've been able to finagle that path and figure out. But I got to say to everybody who's watching this who wants to be a writer, you better read a lot, because if you're going to be a writer, you got to actually be able to write.
Yeah.
You know, I hate to say it, but I see a lot of people that have self-published books and they can't actually write. But this guy
I'm going to talk
can
about
write.
That. I'm going to talk about that a little. I've been on both sides of the fence.
Right.
I've had a traditional publisher, and now I'm an indie writer. And back a few years, traditional publishing was all there was. Then there was the vanity press, people that print books to put in their attic.
All right.
2007, Amazon developed the Kindle Reader. And then 2008, the pod machine was invented. That's print-on-demand machine. This allowed the indie writer the opportunity to have the same outlets that a traditional writer had, more or less.
Right. And not
sell
have to buy
ebooks.
20,000 books.
Right. And paperbacks, they didn't have to put a penny into the paperbacks. Right. And then they could get on Amazon and look like any other writer. Okay. And so it started a revolution. And the early adopters, a lot of those early indie writers did quite well. It has changed. There have been just an influx of millions of people who want to write an indie novel.
500,000 books are published every year.
Yeah.
And to put that in perspective, if you go into a Barnes & Noble, what are there? Maybe 20,000 titles in there? And of course, Gone with the Wind's got to be there. All John Grisham's books have to be there.
Absolutely.
You know? Yep. So to get to think that you're going to break through the noise, you got to be good, and you got to be able to tell your story to get somebody to read your story.
That's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. There are so many now. COVID. Everybody that had a novel in their head got sent home for COVID. They wrote the thing, and it's not out on Amazon. I don't want to discourage anybody out there from writing the novel, but there are three things you've got to do. Number one, Ernest Hemingway said there's only one kind of writing. That's rewriting. You've got to, when you finish writing that novel, you've got to go back through it again and again and again. Then you've got to go through it a few more times.
Right.
You've got to make sure it's right. All right. Second, you've got to get it professionally edited. Now, put professional in quotes. You've got to either hire somebody that's a reputable person that edits novels.
Right.
Your local English teacher may not be the person.
Right. This does not mean your high school friend who made A's in English.
Or you've got to have a group of beta readers. Now, I've got a group. My wife is my alpha reader. Dr. Charlotte Hughes, love of my life, my sweetie. She puts up with a lot from me, and she does all my alpha reading. But once I get past that stage, I have a group of 9 beta readers who go through it in detail. And these are people who know what they're doing.
All right.
And I get their responses. My cousin, Sherry Garner, I've got 2 brothers that were scientists, engineers in the space program, Kim Hughes, Mark Hughes, and my son, Stephen Hughes. He does all my covers now. And a number of people, I'm sorry I'm leaving people out, but I get their responses. I make all the changes. And then I go through Grammarly. I run it through Grammarly. And if you've ever worked with Grammarly, you have to use some discretion. You can't just accept it.
Sure.
But you got to know what to take and what not to take. Then I've got a list of about 50 pet words that I tend to type in as I'm rushing out putting that draft. So I will take my pet words and I'll look for that word everywhere in the document, search it all the way through, rewrite it, or just leave it out. And occasionally leave it as the best choice, not often. When I get all that done, I send it to Marilyn Parker, who lives here in Orange Beach. She is my final reader. And she finds all the stuff that everybody else misses, and she makes sure my logic is logical.
Right.
There's a little problem here in that when I'm doing all this, I'm a perfectionist. I tend to go change things. And sometimes I will make late changes. Well, every time I will make late changes, and I'll sometimes introduce errors doing that. So you have to watch out for that. The third thing the indie writer has got to do is marketing.
Yeah.
And I'm a novice in that end. I could sell little colored chunks of concrete by doing TV ads and by treating my customers like kings and queens. But marketing books is a little different. So I'm learning. And you got to push. You don't have any choice. It serves no purpose whatsoever to write a book, put it out on Amazon, and sit there.
Right.
And it sells 0 copies, 4 copies. All your friends buy it, so you sell 22 copies.
And I'll tell people too, just getting it in Barnes & Noble means nothing. Because, I mean, even my books right now, I mean, I have books in Barnes & Noble, but you can bet that they're spying out somewhere in the depths of this store. And my books are not put on that front table. And so you're not going to just walk into a Barnes & Noble and find an Andy Andrews book. My books at Barnes & Noble sell if somebody goes in and says, I'm looking for the Heartmender, or I'm looking for an Andy Andrews book. And then somebody looks up and tells them where it is. But they're not going to find it, which means I have got to have put some effort into getting that person to want to go into that store and ask for it.
Absolutely, yes.
Because it can sit on Amazon just like it can sit in Barnes & Noble. And so it's a matter of figuring out the marketing and to figure out, and of course, I'm always looking at different ways, because I have the theory, if you're doing what everybody else is doing, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
Because everybody ain't making it. And I'll make a confession to you here on this show. I don't think I've ever said this publicly, but one way that I marketed one of my books is, the publisher to this day, 21 years, has never gotten the traveler's gift into airports, the traveler's gift, and never gotten in airports. And so I saw the same thing happening with some of my other books. So I decided I'd give books away like crazy. I figure that's the greatest brochure for the book, get word of mouth going. And so I started taking bagfuls of books with me on my trips, and I would stock the airport bookstore when nobody was looking. I mean, I didn't get any money for it,
right?
But those books have barcodes on the back of them. Right. And so they started showing up in the sales reports of these stores. And I got one book going like that. I was, and of course, if I'm stocking the airport bookstore, I'm stocking it face out. I mean, it's in a good place, And we have friends. We kind of look
have to try that.
Yeah, I mean, we look out for each other. I mean, I'll find if I find your books somewhere, you can bet I won't leave the store without those books being face out.
Yeah.
Dave Ramsey doesn't need any help, but every time I go into some bookstore or some airport bookstore that has some Dave Ramsey books, I will face out and I'll put them all like this. I'll cover the whole thing and I'll take a picture of it and I send it to Dave and said, it'll say St. Louis Airport, my work in here is done.
I love it.
But I figured,
That's
hey,
good.
we got to look out for each other, man.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. That marketing
it's the key.
Is the key.
Those three things. If you're serious about writing novels, you've got to do those three things. If you're not really that serious, don't spend the time to do it. Because even a simple novel, you got 1,000 hours into it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And if you're going to just leave it in your dresser, it serves no purpose whatsoever.
Yeah, that's exactly right. People would ask me sometimes, they would say, when you're writing, I'm assuming you're doing it kind of with love for writing and you're not really thinking about selling it when you're writing it, are you? And I'm like, I'm absolutely thinking about selling it when I'm writing, because it's too hard to write to not write something that somebody wants, that can help somebody in some way so yeah, I'm always thinking in those terms. So did your writing career, did it take off as a novelist after your first novel, or did it build on?
It built slowly. It's building.
I know,
Put it
that's
in
what
present
I say.
tense.
It's
I'm building slowly.
Now, yeah.
Conecuh won the bronze medal in historical fiction in the Elite Awards for Literary Excellency.
Really? Wow.
And that added a big boost.
Yeah.
And started getting a little more attention and a little better sales. I'm still working hard. My son, like I said, he does my covers, but he also does a lot of my marketing, and we're working together to come up with different ideas for marketing. He wants to do some animation to some of my books.
Yeah.
And we're thinking more of the science fiction novels. And that's another thing I would recommend for the indie writers out there. Don't write in multiple genres. I think I cover 4 different genres. If you want to get attention, focus. But that's just the way I'm made, though. My interest is real varied.
I'm all over the map, and the experts have told me that too. And this is one thing the experts are right about.
Yeah, it is.
Because I see novelists that'll not only focus on one genre, they'll focus on one character. They'll have 20 books and it'll be the same character.
God, it'd bore me to tears.
It would me too. It would me too.
But yeah, people do it.
Now you have like 2 science fiction novels? 4. And are they all the same series?
No, they're all totally different.
But you have 2 that are about a future detective.
I don't count those in my science fiction.
Oh, really?
That's a future fiction detective series.
I am fascinated by that concept. That's going to be my next one I pick up of yours.
2040s, Detective Drake Blast, Master Detective Drake Blast in the 2040s. And it's an age where people have implants in their heads if they can afford them. The rabble doesn't have.
Right. Okay.
But if you can afford it, you've got implants in your head. And all sorts of cars drive themselves. Now, it's not like now where they're worried about these self-driving cars killing people.
These aren't running in there.
It's automatic.
Yeah,
it's
okay.
Controlled. They're not hitting anything. All these people getting killed in car wrecks has gone away. People aren't raising cows. They're eating laboratory prepared meat, which in the 2040s is better.
Yeah.
Then, et cetera, et cetera. But that's the setting. And then, bad people, they don't have an era. They're all eras. Yeah. So even though we've got all these new conveniences, there's still bad people around doing bad things. And that's why we have Master Detective Drake Blast. He takes care of the bad people.
And one of the things this is kind of taking a step sideways on going down this path, but your book, I listen to Audible a lot. And so Conecuh, I always recommend if somebody can read it, read it. Okay. But if you're like me and you're trying to push a lot of things through in your brain, Audible is a great second way of doing it. And your book is the first one that I listened to that has the AI
simulated voice,
simulate. And I when I saw that, because I passed on several books because of that, and because I thought I'm not going to listen to some robot. But then when I knew I was either going to read or listen to Conecuh, and I saw that it had that, I thought, well, how's this going to be? And I put the sample thing on it. I was like, I can't tell. I mean, it's really, really good. I can't tell. There was one, with most human readers, I find a bunch of mispronounced words in there. There was not a single mispronounced word that I caught. There was one thing that I caught, and it was a context. It was like instead of saying something about that, somebody would say something about that. And it was just the wrong emphasis on a word, which was barely noticeable. I noticed it because I was just listening closely, but I don't think anybody else would even notice it. But it was the only odd thing I found. Were you shocked at how good that was?
Absolutely. They notified me, I guess it's been some months ago, that I could do audiobooks on my books with this AI voice. And I said, well, that can't be good. And I listened to it, Andy. They had, I think there's like 8 choices of voices. And I listened to them. I said, they sound like real people.
Yeah.
I said, well, I did Conecuh first just to try it out. I was blown away because it was so realistic, sounded so much like a person. Now, anybody doing this out there, there are some secrets or tricks. You can change the pronunciation. Sometimes you have to get creative with your spelling, or even put an exclamation point in the middle of a word or something to try to get that pronunciation like you want it.
I would imagine Conecuh would have been one of those words.
It was difficult. I had a lot. It took me, it took me a week and a half, 2 weeks to do that.
Because everybody around here is used to the GPS woman saying to head to mobile instead of mobile.
Yeah. But there were a lot of tricks working with it, but if you get it right, and there were a couple of things I never could get right, and one of them is what you were talking about. But I did send Amazon the suggestion. I say, you need to allow us to accent words or accent syllables. That is not a part of it at this time. I'm hoping they add that so you can put some emphasis on a word.
Right.
So that would take care of what you're talking about. But it is amazingly good.
Yeah, I was shocked.
Yeah,
I was shocked at how good it was.
It sounds virtually like a person did it. So,
and as I was going through it, it was only a couple of 3 times that I kind of reminded myself, this isn't a real person doing this. I mean, because I really connect with these readers' voices, and I'm with some critics on Audible. I've seen a couple of books that I did not get because somebody wrote ruined by narration, and I'm like, wow.
I have a kind of a weird little book. It's an alternate world book. You can't call it science fiction. I don't know what you call it, but it's A Bloody Wonderful War, and it's about an Earth somewhere else. It's not our Earth. They have the same technology, but they're fighting World War III. But they're fighting World War III differently. Nobody gets hurt, theoretically. But I did an audiobook on that, and I did the voice. And that was so much work. I said, I am never going to do that again. That's tough on an old man. But so when Amazon told me that they had this, I had to try it. I did Conecuh, and then I did, frankly, my favorite science fiction novel that I've written, Infall. And I did that.
Spell that.
Infall.
Okay,
Infall. I love that novel.
Is that your favorite thing you've done?
Probably Conecuh would be my favorite, but Infall would be my second. They're so different. They're both my favorite.
Right.
You know? And I'm going to do several more. I've got 9 novels out, so I've got audiobooks on 3, so obviously 6 more. When I get a chance, I'm going to do some more. But Infall sounds good too. It worked out really well.
Well, you mentioned 4 different genres. What are the 4?
Well, I've got 2 Civil War novels, historical fiction. I've got 4 science fiction novels. I'm losing fingers here. I've got the 2 future detective novels, which is sort of like science fiction, but not really. It's more like mystery novels or fiction or even spy novels.
Yeah.
Because Detective Drake Blass is both detective and spy.
Okay.
He's got 2 bosses, which, of course, they always have conflicting goals and priorities. But
what a great name for a future detective, Drake Blast. Drake Blast, master detective.
Yeah, and the 4th would be that alternate world book.
Right.
I've got 2 in progress. I'm doing a 3rd Drake Blast book called A War by Any Other Name. And then the other one is going to be, and I tend to write 2 or even 3 novels at once, because if I get kind of stuck on one, I can just go work on the other and let my subconscious work on that first one. And then I'll be taking a shower and my subconscious starts spilling everything out to me. And I'll have to, get dressed and dried real quick or do it the other way around, dried and dressed real quick, and get to that laptop before I forget what my subconscious said and get it down. But I work 2 and even 3. Occasionally I work 3. But the second one I'm working on right now is another historical fiction, but this is about World War II. And it's about the German invasion of Poland on September 1st, 1939. It's called The Wedding. I wrote a song with Tim Lewis back in the 80s called The Wedding. And it was about the German invasion of Poland. Did I say Russian? The German invasion of Poland.
Right.
And I love that song. It's just fabulous. Now, it wasn't the kind of thing that would get cut by an artist. I just loved it because I loved it. I said, I'm going to write that novel one day. Well, I'm actually finally, 40 years later, writing it. It's going to be, it may supplant the others. It's my favorite. I'm really in love with it. The Wedding, they are going to get married on that day. The invasion, the bombs start that morning. There is no wedding, but there is a wedding because they get married to war, not to each other.
Wow.
But that's going to be another year.
I have my favorites of mine too. My favorite thing I've written is The Heart Mender. And it's my favorite because of the story.
Yeah.
That story. Because I think the story leads everything in a teaching book, in a novel. That story's got to be there. And
absolutely.
It's great to find a Civil War story that is just different from telling the story of Gettysburg or telling the story of Fredericksburg or whatever. I mean, to tell the story like you did of Conecuh and volunteering and why he volunteered and then getting captured and held a prisoner, and the bad guy gets after him, and the fiance and the domestic are going, and why the domestic stays with her even when he gets to the free area. And I
have had, his name is Nathaniel White Eagle, and I've had a lot of people come up to me and tell me, Ben, that's my favorite character.
Yeah,
and they love him.
I loved him
more than anybody else in the book. He's actually I probably shouldn't say this. I don't model my characters after real people very often. Mostly there's just composites.
Right.
But that gentleman is modeled after my son's karate teacher when he was growing up. A gentleman named David Mitchell.
Wow.
Who, by the way, you don't want to make
Don't want to mess with. Wow.
But very much the same person.
Well, how can we help you? What can we do to help you?
Help me sell books, marketing.
We will do that.
That is my weakest point, I believe, and probably where I need the most help. Now, there's just a little aside. There's a lot of people that say I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. I promise you. They would disagree. They would say I'm lying, but I'm not.
I'm right there with you, though.
But all these characters talk to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll listen to them day and night.
Yeah.
And they give me some good ideas. They will tell me things about the plot, tell me things about other characters, and I'll listen to them. They're also kind of a hassle because I'm laying in bed trying to sleep, and they're sitting there rattling on about things. When I'm working on a particular novel, they really get vocal.
You're living with them. Yeah.
I'm living with them. And a lot of times when I'm writing that rough, I'm sitting there watching this video in my mind and writing down what I'm seeing. Well, when I finish and publish that novel, this is the good thing. When I finish that novel and publish it, they shut up. I don't hear from them again. It's great.
Wow.
The problem is, while I'm writing that novel, I think of two more. So I have two new sets of characters talking to me.
Right.
And I tell you, it's going to be bad when I get lowered down when I die and they lower me down in there. There's going to be nobody around to listen to all that chatter going on in my head, you know?
I know what you're talking about. You know, I use real historical figures in some of my books. And so because of that, and because of that kind of talking thing, I sometimes feel like I know them. Like obviously I never met George Washington Carver, but I feel like I've had a lot of conversations with him and with Chamberlain and with Abraham Lincoln, you know. And so that is an odd thing to be that immersed in that work that.
Well, when I start treating them as separate individuals, I may have crossed that sanity line a little too far.
Yeah.
But I find it interesting that you use a lot of real people, friends, in your books. That fascinated me.
I do.
Hopefully you don't make them mad.
No, hopefully I don't make them mad, but I do. I figure sometimes, you know, you got to have a character. I'll use one of my friends' names as his character. And sometimes, you know, in the Jones books and the Noticer books, those are like real people around here.
Yeah.
You know, that experienced what I experienced. And so, man, thank you for being with us. We will have all your information on the show notes. I can promise you I will be personally recommending your books and you as an author. And hopefully this show will get some good stuff going there. We have a lot of readers that watch this. And so we're in a bunch of countries and hopefully we will be able to help you a good bit.
Well, I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you.
I'm going to do my best to help you.
Oh, thank you.
I love your stuff.
And listen, when you're down here, don't be a stranger. We'd love to have you come in and be on one of the Blue Plate specials and come hang with us. So
sounds good.
That would be awesome. But thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing the tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Dehydrated water for the cast and crew provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration provided by thecatsmeow.com. Are you a political animal? Just can't get enough of radio talk shows? Can you go from a resting posture to violent action in a heartbeat? Consider donating to the newest extreme form of political activism. Dubbed thecatsmeow.com, this organization is a concentrated pocket of the Libertarian Party. Libertarians, known for their disdain of government interference of any kind, has settled its most extreme members in thecatsmeow.com, a group that models themselves after cats who don't need anybody or anything. Like cats, this political action committee will neither ask for anything or be grateful should they receive anything. Modeled after the American house cat, members of the catsmeow.com caucus are godless individuals who abhor the idea of teams, equality, or work of any kind. They believe the planet would be better off if you and I weren't on it. They don't need your affection, your attention, or your food. Like the felines they're modeled after, they're happy to eat whatever they kill. Donate now. They are thecatsmeow.com.